Aloha. 4.1, writing equations in slope-intercept form. This will be easy because we've already talked about it. Hopefully easy. But now we're going to officially figure out how to write the equations just from points or graphs. So we have vocabulary. It's right here. It's all stuff we've talked about before. Rate is another word for slope or rate of change. Linear model will be being able to write a situation as y equals mx plus b. Let's jump into it. So first one, straightforward. Sometimes they'll tell you the slope and y-intercept, you have to write the equation. So if the slope is -3 and the y-intercept is 1/2, what is the slope-intercept form? What is the y equals mx plus b form of that equation? Let's go through it. So the m is the slope, the rate of change. So m is -3, y-intercept is 1/2 because it tells you the y-intercept's 1/2. So there is the equation, y equals -3x plus 1/2. Okay, what about for b? The slope is 0. The y-intercept is -2. Which equation matches that? So you can replace the m with 0, so 0x plus -2. You can also write that as 0x minus 2, or because it's 0x, just -2. So y equals -2 is the simplified version of that linear equation. So a little tougher. They will give you the line, but they don't actually straight up tell you what the y-intercept and the slope is. You have to calculate it. So for this first equation, they give us these 2 points right here. Use those points, or any other 2 points on that graph, to calculate the slope. So what is the slope for graph A? Okay, so to find the slope, you will go, how much is it rising divided by how much is it running, as it were. So what is the vertical change divided by the horizontal change? So hopefully you noticed that it went up 6 and over 4, so 6 over 4, or you can simplify that to 3 over 2. It goes up 3 and over 2. So the slope was 3/2. There's also a fancy slope formula, okay? So I'll leave that up there if you want to pause and take some notes. I had you do this before on slope formula. So that's if you don't have a graph, you can use just the 2 points and that slope formula to still get 3/2 as the slope. Okay, what is the y-intercept for graph A? The y-intercept is where it crosses, which is right here at 0, -3. So the y-intercept is -3. So now that we know the slope is 3/2 and the y-intercept's -3, you can write the equation y equals 3/2 x minus 3. Or if you really like redundancy, you could put 3/2 x plus -3. Don't do that though, just put -3. Okay, for the second graph, do the same thing. So calculate the slope for the second graph, for graph B. Okay, the slope for this one is going down 3 and over 4 between those 2 points, which again, you can use the handy slope formula to calculate. -3/4 is the slope. And what is the y-intercept for graph B? It is +2 because it crosses here at +2. So the y-intercept's 2. So the equation is y equals -3/4 x plus 2. Okay, now what do you do if you don't have a graph and they don't straight up tell you the slope and y-intercept? What if they just give you 2 points? Okay, this is where that slope formula will come in handy, or you can mentally picture a graph in your head. So using these 2 points, -3/5 and 0, -1, calculate the slope for A. Okay, so the slope, if you use the formula, it's going down 6 and over 3, or -2 if you simplify -6 over 3. If you kind of picture that in your head, it's going from -3/5 to 0, -1. So you can tell it's going down from 5 to -1. So it's a decrease of 6, and it's going from -3 to 0, which is 3. Okay. So the y-intercept is 0, -1 because it tells you it's 0, -1. That's one of the points. So your equation will be -2x minus 1 equals y is our linear equation for this first one. Okay, for the second one, what is the y-intercept for these points for B? Yeah, the y-intercept is -5. It tells you it's at 0, -5. And then calculate the slope. So slope for that one, if you notice, is 0. So the y value is -5 here, and the y value is still -5 here. This is a horizontal line. So your equation will be y equals 0x minus 5, or you can just say y equals -5. Okay, let's jump into what happens if they give you some values for our function. So like f of 0 is 10 and f of 6 is 34. What coordinate pairs, what ordered pairs would these two match? So one of them would be 0, 10. When x is 0, y is 10. And the other would be 6, 34. So once you figure that out, then you can do the same thing we just did on the previous problem. So I'm just going to click through for sake of time of this video. So you can use the formula to find the slope, or kind of picture what's happening in your head, and you'll find the slope is 4. The y-intercept is 10 because it tells you that it's 0, 10. And so y equals 4x plus 10. One way you can always check to see if your equation's right is to take these values and plug them in and make sure that they work. So when you plug in 6 for x here, does it give you 34 for y? It does. And if it works for both of those points, then it means you probably did the equation right. Okay, and the last one will be a real-life example. So a linear model is a linear function that models a real-life situation. Usually we write it in y equals mx plus b. That's what we've been doing. You can also write it in standard form, but that's not what this assignment's about. So here we go. We have windmills. So excluding hydropower, U.S. power plants use renewable energy sources to generate 105 million megawatt hours in 2007. By 2012, that increased to 219 million megawatt hours. Writing a linear model that represents the number of megawatt hours generated by non-hydropower renewable energy sources as a function of the number of years since 2007. So that's a fancy way of telling you you're going to have to find the slope and you're going to have to find the y-intercept. And remember, 2007 will be kind of like our year 0. That's like our starting point. Okay, so see if you can calculate the slope for this situation. What is the rate of change for this situation? Okay, well, let's walk through it. So again, anytime you're doing a word problem, make sure you understand the problem. Make sure that you have a plan to solve it. So the variables, especially if the whole assignment is on writing linear equations, is probably to find the slope and the rate of change. So here we go. Oh, that was the whole thing about how 2007 is year 0. So 2012 would be year 5. And then it went from 105 to 219 in those 5 years. Okay, so in this case, we're going to use these 2 points to calculate the slope. So you're going to have to figure out the difference, the rise. The rise is 114. If you subtract 219 minus 105, divided by 5 years. And that'll tell us 22.8 is the increase in megawatt hours per millions of megawatt hours per year. And then the y-intercept will be the starting value in 2007, which was 105. That's our y-intercept of 0, 105. So for some reason, they wrote the equation backwards of what we've been doing the entire rest of the video, but that's okay. You can rewrite it as 22.8x plus 105, or you can leave it that way with the x second. It's really not wrong. And then you can use that equation to solve all sorts of problems. That'll be kind of what we're moving into next. If you have any questions, make sure to ask in class as you're working through these. If you understand y equals mx plus b, that will be half the battle on these assignments. Okay, good luck. I'll see you in class.